want coincidences after you get your theory in place, then maybe the theory is not so good. Well, our world is haunted by coincidence. The main difference between our world and the world that science tells us we're living in is that science denies the quirky, freaky, cosmic giggle, high-plottedness, completely improbable, totally quirky humor that binds everything together, and it makes it something other than an engine in which atoms blindly run, in Whitehead's phrase. Well, this kind of thinking and looking for colleagues and support led me first to Ralph, who was great good support, but he held my hand long years before I even thought I understood him. I'm not sure I understand him now, and by him I mean only the tiny iota of him, which is this crusty little theory out of which we make our bread. Rupert, I read The New Science of Life, and had read all the other radical biology which preceded it, and knew that there hadn't been anything for 15 years, that Schrödinger brilliantly anticipated the discovery of DNA, and then Joseph Needham and Ella White, and Eric Jantsch should be mentioned actually as a precursor of us all, I think. I mean, Eric Jantsch was a great pioneer, a great soul, and he saw very deeply into whole systems, as did Ilya Prigozhin, the Belgian thermodynamicist. I think all of what we're doing comes out of that. What Prigozhin showed that just brought down the house was that there could be perturbations of physical systems that were unpredictable and that would cause the whole system to actually move to a more ordered state than the initial state. And this perturbation to higher states of order looks suspiciously like a violation of the supposedly inviolate second law of thermodynamics. So that looks, like a doorway into an energetic hyperspace, somehow a way around the no free lunch rule. We'll talk more about this, but these guys, Prigozhin and Jantsch, anticipated and were in many ways inspirational to what we all are doing. So then, before I hand this on to Ralph, in terms of the way the weekend will be structured and to give us something to hang all this on, Rupert mentioned the triadic structure of the dialogs, and that he would be representing the creative evolutionary impulse. I will represent the divine imagination, the imagination a la William Blake. In other words, this domain, this legacy of the human mind in which culture and dream and personal and historical aspiration takes place. We're seeing all of these things as aspects of the world's soul. You see, the notion of morphogenesis, the notion of fields that shape form, eventually this question of how intelligent is the world soul, or how mind-like is the Gaian control system, is just going to give way to the perception that the answer lies probably to the left of, more mind-like than yourself, because it is not we who are in a position to define these things. So the notion of the world soul is properly vivified and pictured and endowed with qualities and properties that are exponential. So I will take that position. My great concern as far as these dialogues is concerned is novelty, the emergence of the unpredictable and the truly new out of the background of the recursive and iterative process processes of nature, how can there be novelty? And what exactly is it? And since very clearly we are the cutting edge of its self-expression, then unraveling this question about what is novelty is going to take us very close to the question of what is human nature? What are we doing in this phase space? What is the nature of the turbulence that we necessarily have to describe as ourselves?
Next of all, I'd like to introduce Terrance McKenna. This is Terrance.
Sorry about that.
Rupert Terrance, I love. Creation, imagination, my mask is chaos. So I was brought up in a field of music, but I was attracted to mathematics early. And when I was 14, I played in the State Symphony. After that, I started in mathematics, and I became a professor at Berkeley when I was 23. I had an easy way in mathematics, and the way the system works, the carpet is unrolled in front of you. You have a few choices that basically, before you even know what's happening, the carpet is unrolled, and you're down the runnel into whatever you can do that's useful to the system. In this process, I lost nature. My interest in anything natural atrophied. I mean, as a child, I suppose I was interested in everything. And for this loss, I don't know the names of trees, for example. I can smell them, but I can hardly tell them apart. But there was a great gain because I love it out there. I love to be off the planet. I always did. And to this day, I spend very little time on planet Earth. So it went on in this way, and by 1967 I was a professor at Princeton. I had written 3 books on mathematics that you need a microscope to read. And I had been studying for a long while chaos, but we didn't call it chaos then, and we didn't see in it any role in the natural world or in social transformation or in the evolution of consciousness, because we didn't think about anything out there. We're just working on this. But personally, my expectation was that anything I invented or discovered or assisted in developing would become abundantly useful in the human sphere in about a century or so. So one day after my 3rd book was done, I was exhausted and I looked up and all the students were out in the courtyard demonstrating about the Vietnam War and to open the university to women students and so on. I said, what exactly is going on? Here they said, take this. And so, like many people in that year or around that time, in 1967, my career had a bifurcation. And I went off the track, and maybe I was, as far as the track was concerned, I might have been permanently burned out by then. I mean, morning, noon, and night in the world of mathematical symbols, it's enough. So I went off the track with psychedelics, with meditation, but especially with searching, with trying everything, and eventually I was living in a cave in the Himalayas. And I got, again, a call to come back. And when I returned to California, I was standing on a street corner in Santa Cruz in white pajamas. And a car stopped. An old friend from a previous lifetime said, there's somebody you have to meet. And I in the car. I had nothing to do. It sounded okay. And in that time, I believed that everything goes perfectly. You just go along with the flow, as they said. I didn't know it would be a 2-hour drive. So I got in the car, there was a 2-hour drive to Berkeley, and I was literally dumped out of the car on Terrance's front step. I never heard of Terrance at that time, it was 1972. And I went in, and what happened then, I would still say, although we've had many wonderful talks and exciting, thrilling, and nutritious times in the meanwhile, that was quite a miraculous chat. Many subjects came up. not psychedelics. I mean, many subjects came up, and every subject was the occasion of a discovery of a most miraculous resonance of ideas. How to grow mushrooms, outer space, I don't know, anything you could think of, all passed by in the course of an hour or two. In this way, we became friends, and this habit we have, this activity that we do, I mean, we never go for a hike or something like that. We sit in the evening and talk, and what happens is synergistic, miraculous growth, evolutionary. Well, I did in the course of time return to mathematics, even doing what I had done previously, chaos, but then chaos had become known. You see, my estimate of the century was off. It was a numerical error, one of my worst. Because life is a lot more fun since 100 years became 10. See, like it's going faster now. And I began in my work to think about applications to the problems of the world, to the evolution of consciousness, to the destruction of the planet, and so on. And in this revitalization of my work, and eventually the whole field of mathematics, my conversations with terrance, whereas I think we thought of them as just good fun, that they did have a really fundamental influence on everything I've done since. So fun, or I would say fun is insulting. I mean, thrilling, because of going to the edge, going beyond the edge, having company there, finding things which you can bring back and they work, and become part of everything you're doing. And along the way, Terrance introduced me to this person he mentioned, Eric Yonch, who bothered me to write a paper, and that was the first time that I had tried writing for a journal or a book or something, the kind of thing that we had talked about, which I always considered to be just a little too far out to be, condensed onto paper to show to people who read. I mean, who are they? They're scholars in universities or something. So Eric Yonch bothered me to write in this way, and what came out, I think, although I wrote many in a way more practical, understandable, and valuable things in the meanwhile, if they're worth anything, they seem to be worth more than that. Nevertheless, that paper contained, as a kind of clairvoyance, the very definite prefiguration of everything that's happened between then, 1975, and now, which is quite a lot of development on the frontiers of mathematics, of reconnection between mathematics and the other departments in the university, most especially the social sciences, the things, therapies and the understanding of society and history, and all what might be the most valuable when we come to try to interact with the creation of our future in a conscious way. Then, a little later, as Rupert said, I was in Terrance's living room, the phone rang, Terrance answered and said, we have to go to the bus station to pick up Rupert Sheldrake. But that sounds vaguely familiar. Who's that? So in the car on the way to the bus station, Terrance gave me, as only he can do, the compressed into a nutshell poetic essence of Rupert's book on the hypothesis of formative causation. And we plucked the lad from the bus station and took him home to the spider web. And then we found, I felt, another miracle, and that the synergy of two was extended to three. For me, a totally unexpected new frontier. I mean, the close relationship of two people is well known, and the close relationship of three people is known but rare. And in the time since